Everyone know that today is actually Michael's birthday. So this is a song I wrote for him 8 years ago for his 73rd birthday. Yeah, my mouth is right there. Never before performed live. So see how this goes. Chilling up on the balcony, catching up and we're smoking weed. Everybody in the family already knows how you still act 17, even though you're turning 73. Oh, life's better when you're hanging with me, my daddy, 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 oh. But it still takes time to let it unwind, 'cause it's only once a year. There's so much to say when we're watching the bay. I say let's have fun, it's a birthday. There it is, thank you guys. Happy birthday, You love that line about you still act 17 even though you're turning 73.
Not wrong.
So true.
Right.
Yeah, such a smart, intelligent, funny human being, but also so immature in the best way. Try to keep that youthful spirit going.
All right. Amazing. All right. This is really high for me.
Lower? Yeah.
Nice.
All right. I'm a professional. Okay. So for anyone who didn't know, that was Sorgen,
Yeah.
Michael's youngest son.
Yeah.
I'm Monique Sorgen. I am Michael's oldest daughter, and also his oldest, and he's also his youngest overall. So, all right. I have some words for my father. We're going to, just so you have a sense of the format, we're going to start with some of his immediate family speaking words, and then anyone else who has something that they've prepared or something they just really need to say to everyone is welcome to come up here. So, I will start it off. When I think about my father, the first thing I think about is his joie de vivre. French for finding the joy in life, he prioritized traveling the world and learning different languages, mostly so he could talk to strangers in every country. And when I say talk, I obviously mean flirt. Most of his kids took from him his joie de vivre, and in that way, he was an amazing role model. I'm trying to do this without my glasses, by the way. He showed us how to approach life like it's a party that never ends, because one day it will end, as it has for him. And even though his round of this party on earth is over, I love being able to look back on his life and knowing that he didn't squander a second of it. His joie de vivre showed when he danced, when he worked, and when he ate every possible kind of food, even the rotten kind. The man had a gut steal. To his credit, most of the time he did cut off the moldy parts before putting the rest in his mouth. Another thing he often put into his mouth was his foot. He didn't have any boundaries. I've often thought that his lack of boundaries was a bad thing because he would never gauge his audience before speaking his mind. I was extremely embarrassed by him as a child, and also as an adult. But recently I've come to realize that his lack of boundaries, it was his lack of boundaries that allowed him to believe that he could change the world. He dedicated his life work to the betterment of society for all, and most people don't do that because they don't think they can have an effect. But like I said, he had no boundaries, so he didn't see impossibility or register the word no. His lack of boundaries allowed him to push forward against the will of his adversaries, as well as some of his bosses and coworkers. But it was through his unalterable determination that he was able to improve so many lives for entire communities of people in the Bay Area and around the world. Anyone who has read his obituary knows he was inspiring. He inspired me and his other children to want to change the world through our careers too. Valerie followed most closely in his footsteps as a master force in the world of disrupting and improving education. Jeremy studied religion and ethics in his effort to find how he could help the most people. Zach communicates about emotions through his music. And for me, it's the reason I went into filmmaking. When I first pursued it, it was 100% because I thought it would give me the biggest possible platform through which I could tell stories that would change the world for the better by reframing audiences' perception of wrongly represented people in society. It turned out film was a much harder place to get your voice heard than I'd expected, especially if you're a woman. But the point is, I wanted to follow in his footsteps in my way, and it was his work changing the world, and his inability to see boundaries for himself or for me that made me feel like I should and think that I could. My father always believed I could do anything I put my mind to, no matter how dire things looked. Little story about that. We used to get high together and have the deepest talks. I'm not special. He did that with all of his kids. But I remember on one of those days when we were getting high by a creek, probably in Topanga or something, and I was opening up to him about how hard things had gotten in my career or my love life, who knows, both have often felt less than optimal. And he said, I don't worry about you, Monique. You're a débrouillard, which is a great French word to describe someone who always lands on their feet. I don't know if it was true, but I believed him. And when I felt like things were going badly for me, I always thought of the confidence he had in my ability to land on my feet. Or maybe I just didn't want to let him down. But I always found a way to fight my way back to standing, and I know I always will. It's nice to have a parent who believes in you, even if it's because he doesn't believe in boundaries. No, not even the kind that might prevent you from getting high with your kids. My dad taught me that I should never give up on what's right. So as hard as it's been to get my message heard, he's my inspiration to keep fighting. That fight gives me a sense of purpose, and I thank him, and I know I'll always land on my feet. Next we're going to go to the family. I don't know if Jay, would you like to say something? Did you want to say something, or no pressure to anyone? This is Michael Sorgen's brother, Jay Sorgen.
Hey.
Well, my goal here really is to try to display or talk to you about some of the anecdotal things that were in our childhood, because many of you don't know anything about that. And of course, I do, fortunately and unfortunately. And Michael and I had a pretty unique relationship because of our parents, who didn't get a whole lot of attention to us. And at the dinner table, they'd have their newspapers across the table, each of them, and Michael and I be across, and he'd throw stuff, telling jokes, or like Dad put the paper down, and Michael would go, nothing. But he was the kind of guy that could inspire you. He could piss you off in about a half a second. And, but he was inspiring to most of us. And so bear with me, I'm going to jump around and I'm going to try to get through this. I think you'll appreciate it. I hope you do. So it's hard to believe, of course, that I've known my brother for 78 years. And that's pretty hard to believe in itself. And he always had something to say. He always debated it. He always won. And we always knew that he would be a lawyer. We always knew that. And he never liked being told what to do. And my mother loved to tell me what to do. So you can imagine that relationship. And like one day, it was a Sunday, I think, and we were all up there, and my mother was like, Michael, go get some bagels. And like, well, how am I supposed to get there? I'm like, I don't care how you get there, take the car. Well, he was 15. And so I'm standing there and looking at the window, and of course he's 15, and I'm, what was that, 12? And I'm like, Michael's like taking the car. And he was already out the driveway. And so my dad freaks out. He had just woken up and got out of the shower. He leaps in the car and he's down there again. And of course, he got him, brought him back. What are you thinking? You told me to go get the bagels. I always do what you tell me to do. You never do what I tell me to do. Well, that was that story. And let's see. So the other thing was that there was a beach in Connecticut. We grew up in Fairfield, Connecticut, and there was a beach in Bridgeport, Connecticut, called Seaside Park. And we would always go to the beach. And he'd have his group of buddies, and I'd have mine. But he would always inevitably get me in the water and drown me. Didn't matter what day of the week it was, always held my head underwater. So one day, he was out playing around. I dug this big hole, and I covered it with a blanket. So he came running back up the beach out of the water, and I'm laying there next to the hole, on the blanket. And he dives onto the blanket, boom, into the hole. So I got him back for that. And anyways, let's see. Well, like I said, he and Selma were always at each other, but nonetheless, he was about, I was about 10, he was about 13, and we would work for our father. So Marvin had a store in Westport, Connecticut, which was about a 20-minute ride, and it was a paint supply store. And this place used to be this riding academy, so all of the stores were old barns. So we had 2 barns, and it was called the Paint Bucket. And my dad had this reputation. He could match any color. And in those days, there were no color machines. There was just grease tubes. And eventually we graduated to those pump machines. So my brother would do sales and cash register. I was a stock boy and also a picture framer. There was a little guy about this big. His name was Eddie Cerullo. He used to be the picture framer in the art studio guy. Taught me how to picture frame. What?
Get closer.
Get closer. Can you hear me? No. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll get closer. How's that? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Anyways, so my brother did all the sales and so forth, and I cleaned the store, stock boy, did picture framing. That's probably what got me into woodworking, was picture framing. And neither of us really wanted to go to work. You know how that is. Parent has a store, you go to work. So let's see. One of the ways to show my brother's sense of humor is this little story. When he graduated from, I think it was after he graduated from Brown that he went to Europe. It was either that or when he was in school in Europe. But anyway, so he tells my mother he's going to go visit Germany, among other places. My mother's Jewish. She's like, you can't go to Germany, they will kill you. You're Jewish. And so one day, it was right around April Fool's, And I'm outside by the mailbox, and my mother pulls up in her car, grabs the mail. There's a letter from my brother. So my brother relays this story about he was hitchhiking. Well, that's the last thing she wanted to hear. He was hitchhiking in Germany. And he got picked up by 2 guys who took him to a barn and tied him up. And so he goes through this whole description. And I'm standing there watching, my mother's reading this out loud. And she's like, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, we get to the end and it's like, April Fools, Mom. And so she's right standing there. She was like, I'm gonna slap his face when he gets off the plane, which is like gonna be, 3, 4, 5, 6 months away. I don't remember how far out. And sure enough, when he got off that plane, she whacked him. And then she said hi. And so that was kind of how we were. He could stretch you to the max. And back to the store, we had a lot of really interesting people that came in that store. Like Tony Curtis came in with Janet Lee, and Coleman came in with his wife, and there were a lot of artists. And my brother, he knew how to talk to these people. Except when Tony Curtis came in with Janet Lee, and my brother was there, and my dad was here, and I was here. I was pretty young then. Janet Lee was somewhat beautiful. And I noticed the 3 of us were kind of like, but it's my brother who saved the day. So he brought up conversation, took it to the business level, all that sort of thing. Anyways, there were a lot of things that he was, and there were a lot of things that he couldn't do because he was such a savant. But he couldn't change a light bulb. I taught him that. And he didn't know anything about his car. And so, for instance, one day I flew down to San Francisco because my dad was there with his wife. And I flew down with a friend of mine in a 4-seater plane to pick them up and fly them back to Oregon. When we got out of the plane, there was my brother's brown Jetta. And
Burgundy.
was it
Well, he
burgundy?
had the brown one. No, he had a brown rabbit and a burgundy Jetta.
So it was a brown rabbit. And I walked up to the car and I looked at it. The tires weren't flat, but they were pretty close. and then I said, Michael, your tires look flat. Oh, maybe that's why it steers so hard. And then I checked the oil, of course, and it wasn't oil. So he was really way too busy for that. But in another story about cars, when he graduated from Brown, my dad bought him a car. And so, I don't know, I can't remember what year he graduated Brown. 64, that's right. I knew you would tell me. Thank you. So this car was like a 4-door brown Dodge Coronet kind of thing, with big fins and huge car. Michael saw that car and absolutely would not get in that car. And this is my dad buying him a car. Anyway, so he resisted that. And that's when I found him a Carmen Ghia. Green Carmen Ghia convertible that he had for quite a while. Anyways, he's kind of a hard act to follow, but we all have our talents. and we were all pretty musical in the family, and my mom and dad could sing really well. I could sing. Michael tried really hard. He said he could sing, but he tried hard. But it never bothered him whether he tried hard or not, or whether he was good at it or not. He was in there, and you all know that because that's who he was. So I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to miss my bro. And we always called each other bro, and that was in his last few days. That was how he knew it was me visiting, because I would say bro, and then he would know. He wouldn't recognize me at first. he would say, "You look like my bro." I'm like, "Well, I am your bro." Anyways, thank you all for coming, and I want to say also that when things started happening, when he was going downhill, you know, I'm a younger brother. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And so I'm really glad and blessed that my brother had 4 tremendous kids that took it over and made his life the best that they could possibly do in the situation. And I'm really appreciative of that. I really am, and I'm very, very appreciative of Mary for all that she's done for all of us. Thank you, and I hope we have a great party.
And also I want to point out that when my dad was on his last few hours, we really didn't think he was going to make it, but he waited for Jay to arrive on a flight that had gotten delayed. And as soon as Jay came, we'd all been there, and as soon as Jay came and said his final piece, we left, and by the time we got into our respective dwellings for that evening, he had passed. So it was really very beautiful, but also another sign of control. So, Jeremy, I don't know if you want to say something? All right, so Jeremy is his oldest son and the third in the line of siblings.
I'm going to be much briefer. Yeah, I like all these stories, but I knew we'd be running short on time, so I tried to boil everything down to some kind of essential thing. And so I wrote to my father, a passionate man. My dad was a man of passion. He loved, in no particular order, travel, tennis, politics, food, nature, parties, sports, music, wildlife, and women. He had many loves, for that is the life of a passionate man. In my mid-20s, coming home from my own globetrotting adventures, I lived with him and got to know him better. And I can attest that on most days, most of the time, he did exactly what he wanted to do. Passion got him up early, out of doors, and about town. He had a restless spirit and an insatiable appetite for good things. He was endlessly energetic and engaged, sociable and boisterous, and until his twilight years, rarely took time to reflect. This, of course, often led him into trouble, which he shrugged off and referenced our last name Sorgen, which one of the meanings is trouble. But that's passion, unruly and unsanctioned. It's hard to make an idol out of passion. Passion does not strive for excellence. Passion is as passion does. At the same time, passion is honest with itself, and I suppose understanding this helped me accept my dad for his faults and admire him for the rich and forthright life he led. It was a whirlwind of adventure just to be at his side, and I think all of us felt something of this. To honor a passionate man, I want to end with a poem my dad often repeated from memory. This is Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and will suffice.
Valerie is going to come up. She is the youngest daughter and the third in the line of second. What's going on? The second. No, the second. There may be children we don't know about.
My thought was if we get through today, we're gonna clear, so speak now. If you're out there. I'm Valerie. I wasn't planning to speak. My relationship with my dad, like many of us in this room, was complicated. And there are many directions I could go, but one thing that just being here today, looking at this picture, and we've been going through albums all week, I really have taken from my dad is the idea and the feeling of extended family. And I think this picture tells its own story. Mary, who came into our lives about a decade ago, has become family to us. We're all staying at her house, whether she likes it or not, this week. But the way I've approached my life has been to embrace people as extended family. And there are people here I've known since I was a baby, since middle school, adult life friends. And I think my own family, sitting over here, Saka and Layla and Camille, their lives are so enriched by the way that I was taught and we were raised to love other people. And Dad's exuberance, though sometimes overmuch, as you've heard, I think also kept people connected to him for years and years and years based on one interaction or one experience. Maybe because he overshared everything, but maybe also just because the love was really genuine coming from him. One other thing I have taken from him is what his mom would have called freshness, which is not a good thing to hear. I still remember the first time I was probably like 8 and she was like, "You're fresh like your dad." But that freshness, I think we all inherited it in some way, shape, or form, and I think it has made us into fighters and made us into people who can hold extended families in our lives and hopefully challenge the people in our lives, but still make them feel loved. And I think that's something Dad did beautifully, and so I really just appreciate this extended family for being here for him today.
Thank you, Valerie. That was beautiful. We do appreciate all of you for showing up and caring. And I do want to say something about Fresh. So some of you may have seen my film Sorry Not Sorry. There was a character of an old man who was played by M. Emmett Walsh that was actually based on Michael and Jay's mother, Selma. And there was a line that never made it into the movie where he said, "You're so fresh." But the actor just didn't understand what it meant, and he just couldn't say it right, no matter how many times I tried to explain it to him. So we ended up cutting it, but it's really kind of a bummer to me that we didn't get that in there. All right, so at this point, I don't know if Layla or Camille want to say anything, or any of the husbands and wives of our siblings. You're welcome to, you're not obligated to. And the offer is still open, even if we move on to the wives, ex-wives, mothers of those children, recent girlfriends. Would any of you like to say something?
Sure.
Gary Campbell.
I know
Yeah.
Gary. Gary's definitely first.
There you go.
And please, as you come up here, let us know who you are to Michael.
I'm Gary Campbell, and I'm this is an emotional day for me, made even more so by the fact that Joyce, Jerry's mom, came up to me and my wife Helen and informed me that I was partially responsible for Jeremy's birth.
What?
Well, before you get too excited,
Wait.
I was there at the first date that she and Michael had, and I didn't screw that up. So Michael and I have been friends for over 50 years. We walked many similar paths. We both married women who spoke a foreign language. We had firstborn daughters in the Hastings Child Care Center, which is how we met, and our daughters became lifetime best friends. We both taught political science at university. We both went to law school, Michael to Harvard, and I went to Yale. We never really argued about which was better. We had a discussion once. Michael said Harvard was. I told him he was wrong. And that was that. We were both law school professors. We both played the clarinet. Michael, don't get too excited. Michael loved it and kept at it pretty much his whole life. I hated it and quit it as soon as I could. We both had birthdays today. Michael, 81, which has been mentioned, and a recovery birthday for me of 39 years. So, yeah, thanks to Michael for recovery. So, we used, so it's a day we called each other and talked and all that stuff. So, I spent a lot of time in the Sorgen tribe. Michael and Francoise opened up their home to me after my separation in 1973. Spent a lot of time there, and I felt very useful around the house as Michael couldn't turn a screw. So I got to pretend I was a handyman, which is my wife Shell can inform you is not the case. Michael also opened up his house to me when we lived in the Castro, and during our bachelor times. Much fun was had by us, and as you know, Michael's favorite saying was, "I just want to have fun," and so fun we had. Michael could be unbelievably kind, charming, childlike in a good way, giving and thoughtful, always interesting. But he could also be totally oblivious to the world around him and those in it and their needs and how the world worked for the rest of us. Sometimes I wanted to hug him for who he was, and other times I wanted to smack him in the face with a red newspaper. He could just absolutely frustrate the crap out of me and those around him. I don't hear anybody. I'm here by myself looking like some dick rat bastard. So Michael was, as I believe we all are, a package deal. Pros and cons. I loved Michael for who he was, and I still do. Michael's legal accomplishments were actually quite extraordinary. You might want to read his obituary. Did you prepare that? Somebody? Excellent. Well, take credit, people. If you haven't. However, Michael's greatest achievement as an attorney may have been the time he kept himself out of jail in El Dorado County by beating assault charges. See me later if you want the details. But Michael's real legacy, to my way of thinking, are the families and that kind of stuff that he left behind. Francoise, Joyce, and Phoebe, and Mary, a companion later on. That's 2 ex-wives and 3 mothers of his 4 children, none of whom, as far as I know, ever had to request a restraining order against Michael. Each woman accomplished in her own way, yet each chose to walk part of their path with Michael. Package deal, pros and cons. And 4 good kids. How many people get to say that in this day and age? Obviously, the moms had a great deal to do with how Monique, Valerie, Jeremy, and Zachary turned out, but surely Michael was partially responsible for that. So, if you guys are happy with how you turned out, you might want to give the old man a shout out now and then. Package deal, pros and cons. I want to acknowledge Michael's brother Jay, who had the longest relationship of any of us here with Michael, and certainly one of the most interesting. Packages sometimes deliver us things that we might not be too happy about at the time, but more than often they deliver us things that we want, like goods, gifts, toys, etc. Things we can use, enjoy, play with, and have fun. Michael was a package deal and continues to deliver fun to us as witnessed by this gathering. So I want to honor Michael today by thanking him for his gifts and saying that I too just want to have fun.
Yeah.
So the obituary was an interesting thing that you brought up. I wrote the first draft, and then basically every single person participated, from all of the moms who had different parts of his history, and Jay and Mary and all the kids. Everybody kind of chimed in on making that a real group effort to make it a full picture.
It was great.
Okay, Phoebe, you'd like to speak? Okay, Phoebe, his official second wife, but third mother of the children.
Hello, thank you all for coming today. I'm so moved to see you and to hear what you have to say. And I want to note that there's some chairs available if anybody would like to sit. Yeah, I'm reminded of several things. Michael inherited, well, both his parents had a good sense of humor. And so he inherited that. His dad used to say if somebody passed gas, tight shoes. And I was reminded with Michael's little prank about living in Germany, I was reminded when Valerie wrote Michael and I a long letter about why she was running away when she was a teenager. And we were just devastated, and then at the end it was like, just kidding.
She's throwing medicine there.
Yeah, so the name Michael means like a god, fitting for an extraordinary man whose many accomplishments seem almost humanly impossible. On my memory page for his scrapbook, I wrote about how he was an excellent role model. I want to add that his altruism, humor, boundless self-confidence, and optimism were crucial to his successes. At risk of seeming hypocritical, I admit that despite sharing very similar values and interests, our communication styles differed dramatically. We forgave each other. And I'm also remembering one time when I was just so frustrated and he stalked off and roared off in his white convertible, making a U-turn with screeching tires at the top of the street and then coming back by the house, by which time I was ready with tomatoes. And he just laughed and laughed. He thought that was hilarious. So the humor really helped a lot. We both tend to keep all our exes. I thank his wonderful family and friends for having welcomed me into his communities. I plan to emulate him by staying in better touch. Hold me to that, Judith and Tammy, and it's a question of time management. He had great time management skills. Please save the date for my 70th B-Day Bash, October 1st. You are all welcome. Let's carry forth his fun-loving example and his example of ongoing connection. I'll always be grateful for Michael's many gifts and generosity over our 16 years of marriage and our enduring friendship. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear in case anyone's confused. Phoebe's official birthday is September 27th, just the party is October 1st. Also want to point out that of the wives, Maya and Valerie's mother, Françoise, had planned to be here with her husband, Olivier, and they found out they had COVID yesterday. So very disappointing that they were not able to come. But they're fine, they're not dying. Who else would like to speak? Toby, did you want to say something? Did anyone? So at this point, we're really opening it up to anyone who has something they would, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Al Gilbert. Two friends here. Thank you. Props, please. I'll be short, but I'll be echoing some of the sentiments that you heard before, which is reassuring knowing that I am now with the right event. So Michael and I were tennis buddies, along with Brian Shearer and others here. I met Michael in 1981 when I moved out here. And in an effort to best describe Michael, I reached out to some of my Jewish friends. And I said, look, I'm looking for a phrase that describes someone who's kind of a crusty curmudgeon on the outside, but has a heart of gold on the inside. And they couldn't come up with anything. So I created my own Yiddish expression. Michael was what I call a kuchlefel mensch. So what does that mean? Well, a mensch we all know is someone of good character, dignity and honesty. A kuchlefel is a German kitchen wooden spoon that mixes up ingredients. And no one liked to mix things up like Michael's story. On a personal adjective, it means someone who likes to mix things up to a point of agitation. And when you think about it, after all, he was that. I mean, after all, who gets fired from the Peace Corps? That's a career oxymoron. Michael was my kuchlefel mensch on a couple of levels. First one was tennis. So when the first time I played Michael, I thought to myself, oh, this is going to be easy. I mean, here I am classically trained, beautiful strokes, killer serve, and I look good in tennis shorts. Michael across the net, on the other hand, has no formal training, terrible form, looks like a fire plug in Bermuda shorts, and has a serve so weak and wimpy that when it sails across the net and bounces in the service court, it dies like a dead bird. There's nothing you can do with it except make an unforced error. And in the 40 years of tennis with Michael, he won over half of our matches together. I'm telling you, the man was my tennis nemesis. I didn't know what to do with him. Communication was another of Michael's kuchlefels. On a business level, Michael was an accomplished legal scholar and a tenacious negotiator. But on a personal level, at least with me, he was a terrible listener. When Michael and I were together, his idea of listening was to wait only long enough so he could talk.
That's who we want.
Right? And when I would say something, very often on a personal level, he would reply with a comment that made absolutely no sense. He would reply with a comment that was absolutely unrelated to writing. So I would, I'd ask him in frustration. I said, Michael, what was the last thing I said? And instantly he would say, I don't know. And then he would talk over me, right?
Mm-hmm.
He would talk over me. And when I'd call him on it, again, without missing a beat, totally in a sense, he said, I can talk and listen at the same time. What? Nevertheless, the mensch side of Michael far outrode his kuchlefel side. He was devoted to his children, dedicated to the quality of human rights, and a firm defender of the Constitution. He cared deeply about his friends. I'm fortunate to have a good circle of friends, but Michael was one of the very few, I can count on one hand, who would call me up if he hadn't heard from me for a while. He would call me up and ask me how I was. And I so appreciated that. He was a good friend. But when he got me on the phone, he would not get off the phone until we had made a date for another tennis match or lunch or something like that. But he was always so busy. So I would say, Michael, how about next week? No, I'm going to a World Affairs Council meeting next week. Okay, how about next month? No, I'm going to France or Germany or Tehran or name any country. Well, how about Christmas Day? I know you're not busy on Christmas Day. So we would eventually get a date together. But so today I say to Michael Sorgen, happy birthday, hail and farewell. You are my kuchlefel mensch, but best of all, you are my good friend.
tennis nemesis in Yiddish.
Somebody.
If anyone knows, feel free to write it in the scrapbook. Does anyone else have something they'd like to say? It's really open to anyone, no matter how close or far. Please.
Well, this is folly to follow that act. My name is Ron Yank, and as far as I know, I'm the only guy here from Michael's Law School. Mike and I share an odd distinction, as best I know, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, since he and I attended several law school reunions together. He was the only labor and employment lawyer who graduated from that law school on the plaintiff and employee side. I happen to be the only union side labor lawyer. A lot of you might remember that every February Mike would take off to Yosemite for labor and employment law conference, and you know, my wife and I had a ton of fun hanging out with him. So I'm here just to show the flag. A lot of us remember Mike fondly. Most of us ended up on the East Coast, and I'm, as best I know, one of 5 who hung out with Mike out here on the left coast. Anyhow, hats off to Mike.
Thank you. And I believe that's where he met Mary, right? Yes, that's the event where he met Mary in 2012. Please.
My name is Peter Persley. I met Michael at UC San Francisco. It used to be called Hastings. And he was my teacher in an education law class. He drafted myself and 2 other students to write a complaint in a case that became known as Larry P. versus Riles. It was an attack on the use of IQ tests to place students in classes for the retarded. There were statistics that showed that way too many black students were being classified as retarded. You know, a death sentence really for a child. Myself and the other 2 students drafted the complaint, you know, with Michael's, you know, close supervision and support and input. And when it came time to file the suit, he insisted that the 3 of us, the 3 students, go on the caption of the complaint as of counsel. And he said, well, you know, Michael, you know, we're not lawyers. He said, he waved that off and said, nobody knows what that means. So he was just really generous and bold. And the last thing I'd like to say is that Michael's overriding quality was courage and fearlessness when it came to adversaries. Anybody who sues Chevron Oil is a bold person. You know, I just can't tell you how much, you know, he's meant to me all my life. Just an inspiration. Thank you.
Forrest is going to come, and then
Yeah.
Why don't you come first, since you're up.
Hi, my name is Steve Bedrick. I was Michael's tennis partner for the last 20 years or so I'll bore you with a bit of tennis. Michael and I met when I was coaching Zach and my son Matt's third Little League team in the 3rd grade. Michael had a next door neighbor, Maury, who said, you gotta meet Michael, you gotta meet, you guys have so much in common, And Maury was right. One thing Maury didn't know was that one of the things we had in common was Michael was kicked out of the Peace Corps and I was kicked out of Vista. We apparently had a good match in questioning authority. As tennis partners for 20 years, nothing could stop us. Wet courts, we'd wipe them off. Michael's backhand, slice, drop shot, a terrible shot. Al talked about his miserable play against. I ran hard and I got some of them. When I didn't get them, I referred to myself as being Sorganized. Now, Michael's stroke, not to be confused with the forehand, we worked on rehab together. He was that part of why he got through that rehab was he was so stubborn and so determined, nothing would stop him. When we played after his stroke, we did just fine, because my shots had to be more accurate to go to him. Michael's dementia, we had him brought to the tennis court. We organized a Sorgen tennis club with Dave and Ken and Howard and Nina and me. We added Zach and Jeremy. Occasionally we got Francoise. Occasionally we got Valerie. And occasionally we got Zach.
And Jeremy.
And Jeremy. So what he said was, I'd leave him out. Thank you, it's important. His family said when he played tennis in his dementia years, that was the closest to his being himself that they'd seen in years. So I'm glad everybody, Mary helped organize that. I'm glad we were able to do that. He was proud of attending Lawyers Guild international conferences and proud of all those good victories he obtained for his clients in civil rights and labor cases. And when we played tennis, we had a non-stop patter conversation, back and forth and back and forth. People at 4 courts over would say, you guys were talking the entire time. Back and forth. We talked politics, we talked movies, we talked tennis, we talked our children, and we talked about women. Michael talked a lot about women. What he said, I'm not telling. And as for my criminal appeals, cases which usually involved a dead body, he gave me the left-handed compliment, which again is not backhand, by saying I had the hardest cases of anyone he knew. So I was lucky. Michael was not someone who was great with flattery and comments and praise, so I took that very close to heart. That was wonderful. We all will miss him. He's a wonderful guy. He's irreplaceable as a friend, irreplaceable as a father and spouse, and irreplaceable as a tennis partner.
Thank you, Steve. All right, Forrest.
Hello everybody, my name is Forrest, a longtime friend and bandmate of Zach for probably close to 20 years. 20. We started playing music together in like 6th grade.
Yeah, it's about 20 years.
Wow.
Weird. And I think when I think of Michael, I think of people that are iconic. We quote him often, actually. There's this one time, so first of all, he was generous enough to let us high schoolers practice with our pop rock band in his basement for like every summer, pretty much every day. And so to imagine what that probably sounded like upstairs. But there was one time I think it was like a call with a potential lawyer for us to get representation. We're still like in high school. It's a pretty big deal for us. So we're all huddled up in his living room. I think Michael was out running errands and he comes in, we're in the middle of the call, and we're on speakerphone. He comes in, and Zach kind of gives him a little something like, yeah, keep it quiet. And he goes, who is that? And I'm just like, oh, no, who is that? And it kind of went back and forth like that for a little while, and now we often all quote that. When people are walking down the street, who is that? Or somebody's on the phone, who is that? But really appreciated his generosity. After every show, he would come to a lot of shows too, and you know, would never pass up a party. But we'd be out there dancing and coming out to the show, and just always give such warm feedback every time. And he was always so supportive of the music I was doing individually too, with jazz. Like I said before, he let us rehearse in his basement every day for many summers. And we would come back up to get some food, and he would offer us food too. Might be a little bit of layer of mold on the stew that he would offer us food. He'd always be like, oh man, I just love it. I get a free concert every day. I'm like, man, you're nice. And we'll definitely miss him. feel very fortunate that I got to know him over those summers, but all of his kids have shown me a lot of generosity over the years, and I see a lot of him in all of y'all, and so it's nice to know that a lot of the amazing things about him are being carried on, and I get to still see him essentially, definitely obviously with you, Zach, with your generosity and crazy confidence, and love, fun-loving attitude. So, love you guys, happy to be here, and peace out.
Would anyone else like to speak? All right, we're going to do a last call for speaking. If you've written something and you don't want to say it in front of everyone, we do have a scrapbook out there, which you can just drop it in and we'll paste it in later. And if you haven't written something and you have thoughts that you don't want to share publicly, we also have like some paper and pens. Oh, Jacques, would you like to come up? Oh, please.
Hello everybody, I'm happy to be here. My name is Jacques. I know Michael through Valerie and Saka, close friends of mine. I really think of Michael, I think of a good father. I know all of his children, and I really appreciate how he had a positive relationship with all of them. He was my neighbor later in life, and he would come over to our house for holidays. And he was like extended family, and he was always open. He had a relationship with people young and old, and we loved that about him. I always thought of Michael as a brilliant legal mind. Francois once told me that he attended Harvard Law School library so much because he found it as a good way to meet young ladies. We had a relationship as advisor-client relationship. I think it was arguable who was the advisor and who was the client. He loved to play tennis, as all of you know, and he invited me one time to play, and I think he thought, I'm gonna have some good competition. You know, Jacques 30 years younger than me, he's gonna be able to practice his game. But I was the one that didn't know boundaries that day. I couldn't serve, and Michael talked a lot of trash. And I was going left, right, and he was like, Jacques, you're no good at tennis. And he said, if you had a skirt, this is where I'd let you win, but you don't. So we'll probably never win again. So, I had a loving relationship with Michael, and thanks for the opportunity to get to know him and be a part of your family.
First of all, Michael never let anybody win anything. I was very young when he decided to start beating me openly at games. Also want to mention that Harvard Law Library worked because Valerie and I would not exist without it. I was already met our mother. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, Alex.
Hello, my name is Alex Surratt. I had the great fortune of knowing Michael through his sons, Zach and Jeremy, and of course, all of his other wonderful children. I just very briefly wanted to say that the theme of extended family resonates with me a lot with Michael. When I moved to San Francisco, I had recently lost my own father, and the warmth that he showed me filled a very important part of my life. And the last thing I want to say is in his later years, when Michael's tenacity and memory were not quite the same, he always told me, "You're a clown." And that's because somehow unfailingly for a short 6 months of my life, I was in a circus troupe. And, in that way, Michael reminds reminds me to embrace the humor of life, and I'll always thank him for that.
Thank you, Alex. Anyone else? Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Hi everyone, this is Françoise, and most of you know that I was Michael's first wife and the mother of Monique and Valerie, his first kids. Before I say just a few words, really, allow me to read a translation of what my cousin Danielle wrote, and if you like to read the original in French, you'll have it in the scrapbook. So, this is from Danielle Lévy, mon cousin. Monique was kind enough to write to me after Michael's passing that she had, quote, always adored that her French family appreciated her father so much. Of course, feelings don't absolutely need words, but the time has probably come to say what we loved about him. Before that, it is fair to recall, though not necessary for those who know me, that Françoise is my first cousin, to whom I have been extremely close since my early childhood. And, as is perhaps less well known, she used to say that she had 4 parents, hers of course, and also mine, so that Michael was kind of my brother-in-law. A brother-in-law who arrived in the family haloed by his diplomas, and even for those not familiar with American University, from Harvard Law School, where he ended up at the top of his class, which is no small feat. That being the case, I never heard him brag about it, and I found it remarkable that he devoted so much of his career to championing the cause of the weakest and the poorest. He probably succeeded thanks to an exceptional ability to concentrate. I can still picture him as if it were yesterday, sitting in an armchair in the dining room, Avenue de la Grande Armée, at Georges Gauck and Annette, reading I don't know what paper with such intensity that even if the ceiling had collapsed, he wouldn't have flinched. But I also realized his human qualities, his ease of contact, his humor, when, as first member in the French family to visit, I was a regular guest in San Francisco at the time of Twin Peaks, when I was doing a master's at Stanford. Monique was 8 days old, and it was my very first contact with an infant. I often went there on weekends, arriving for brunches in the middle of or late morning, necessarily a little hungry. I also remember the tennis games. I understand that even handicapped by his leg, he had continued playing as late as possible, and that as one of his character traits, which was not always easy, he liked to win. Michael loved France. He loved speaking French at all times, and he loved going back there. I have a very precise memory of when, through a perfect coincidence, he was there on the day of the circumcision of our first son, Raphael, which took place at the very beginning of July 1981. This Brit Mila was a first for Françoise, my wife, inevitably a bit trying, and also for me, for whom it mattered a lot. I had been happy that Michael was able to attend, making it possible for all my cousins to be represented there, regardless of their own religious beliefs. I don't believe that I really talked about it again with Michael, but I dare think that he was happy to be there. Last but not least, I would like to say how remarkable I found the way Françoise and Michael had known, after their separation, to keep friendly relations, and even more when little brothers Jeremy and Zachary, Jérémy et Zachary, arrived for Monique and Valérie, and when the health of Michael declined. It seems to me that this great brotherhood that I feel in the Sorgen-Goldschmidt family and the love of Michael for his children and grandchildren must be felt by all, again, and particularly so today. Voila, as I write these few words, memories come back to me, and they're happy memories. They're also an opportunity to recall, in my own way, this joie de vivre that inhabited Michael and that will survive beyond this tribute. This is precisely what Michael wanted. Daniel Levy, August 6, 2023. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to have a whole lot to say. I like what Danielle wrote about Michael, but I want you again to know that I really wanted to be with you, share this celebration with you, that as you all, many of you testified, and I look forward to the recording, there's plenty there to celebrate. And how pleased I am and grateful that the connections have stayed as they did stay, not only between Michael and me, but between the friends we had in common, and then I met some of his new friends, he met some of my new friends, and I loved spending time with his two boys, and how the four of them really are a fratrie, I guess we'd say in French. Daniel wrote fraternité, I forget. Anyway, I'm going to stop here. It's never a good time to have COVID, but this surely was terrible. We're fine, by the way. I mean, it's a pretty mild version, but we couldn't take a chance on passing it on to any of the wonderful people that were there celebrating Michael on his 81st birthday. Bye.